Why did God instruct us to mix ashes and water to bring purity? It is truly such an abstract concept. It's something beyond anything that we can really relate to, understand, appreciate, and connect with. But yet, we find in the book of Numbers, there is a chapter that describes exactly how we could bring purity to a person who became impure by coming in contact with a corpse, with a dead person. So what is this all about? What is ashes and water got to do with each other? And how does mixing ashes and water bring purity? So let's dive in. Let's wrap our arms around it and figure out, what is the Bible teaching us here? As an introduction, let me share with you, there are 3 levels of commandments in the Bible. There's one level which is referred to as commandments that bear witness, such as we eat matzah on Passover because it bears witness to an event that happened during the Exodus. Or we eat in the sukkah during the holiday of the tabernacles because these are huts that we lived in the desert, so it reminds us. We light Hanukkah candles to remind us of the miracle that happened on Hanukkah. So these are commandments that bear witnesses. And then there's the next level of commandments, which are basic common laws between man to man, such as if I damage someone else's property, I am obligated, there's a commandment, to compensate for the damages that I've incurred. These are basically a judicial system of how man to man, how person to person needs to be able to conduct themselves in a fair manner, and responsibility and culpability for our actions, that we are totally responsible for what we do or don't do, etc. The whole judicial system between man to man. So that's the second level of commandments. And then comes the third level of commandments. This is referred to as, in Hebrew, the word is chukah, which means a commandment. The first commandment, bearing witnesses, is something which we understand and makes sense. We do things to commemorate, to remind us of the past. The commandments about being responsible and accountable for our actions between man to man, that's to keep a society and humanity living, coexisting. We need to have laws and rules between man to man, makes sense. But then comes this level, there is absolutely no logic whatsoever. There is a group of commandments that God has taught us that we observe them for only one reason, because God told us to. Our mind, our logic cannot figure it out. None of it makes any sense to us. It's in the abstract that it just doesn't add up. We, as human beings, cannot and don't have the ability to understand why God wants us to fulfill these commandments. As an example, there's the law, you cannot mix wool and linen together. You cannot wear a garment that has a single thread of wool and linen mixed together. It's a total prohibition. Let's take the laws of keeping kosher. We observe the laws, the dietary laws of keeping kosher because God told us to. Now, is it logical to us? Really? A cheeseburger? How harmful could that be? So it's not about our logic. It's because God told us you are not allowed to mix milk and meat together. You are not allowed to eat animals that are not from the kosher species. Why? God just told us to do it, and that's what we will follow. The 7th day of the week, the Sabbath. On Saturday, for 24, 25 hours, we refrain from any type of work. We refrain from any type of labor that is prohibited according to the Torah law. Why? It's because God told us to. Yes, we can understand that it's important to have a break one day a week, to make one day a week different than the rest of the week. We understand that the kosher dietary laws is perhaps a healthier diet, etc. Those are things which we could kind of relate to, but that's not the reason why we fulfill them. We fulfill them because God told us to. And there are a group of other commandments that fall under that category that there's absolutely no logic to it whatsoever. So let me introduce to you the concept of ashes and water, which one of these most abstract laws ever recorded in the Torah. But yet there is a dynamite explanation that we can connect with and understand and learn from it. So in the book of Numbers, in the chapter Chukat, it talks about that when a person becomes impure by coming in contact with a dead corpse, the only way to get pure, to reach a level of purity again, is only through going through a purification process. What is that purification process? And here it is. We need to take a red heifer, which means a cow, a heifer, that is absolutely red, that there aren't two hairs that are not red, otherwise it would be disqualified. The total heifer has to be red without any blemishes at all, a perfect, pure red heifer. Just a note in history, there were only 9 such red heifers in existence. 9. When the Messiah comes, God willing, he will introduce the 10th one, and that's going to give us all the purity that we're waiting for. So this is a very unique find, to find a red heifer that's perfectly red. Once we find that, then there's a process. Then this red heifer needs to be slaughtered, and it needs to be burnt to ashes. And then we take water from a live spring, and we mix the water and the ashes together. From this mixture, we sprinkle it on the person who's impure, and they become pure. You think about this and you say, I don't get it. What is the connections of ashes and water? And how does that bring purity to a person? What is it in the ashes and water mixed together from a red heifer, and that's going to make the person pure? It's truly something super spiritual, super magical, in a realm that our mind, our brains cannot wrap ourselves around it in logic. There's absolutely no logic that we can see in it. This is indeed what Judaism has taught us from the very beginning. When God gave the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, when God gave us the Bible, he gave it to us in a way that we should be able to accept, appreciate the laws with trust and faith. Which means we don't truly understand everything. We don't understand why we need to do what we do, but we do it. Just like when a parent throws a child up in the air, the child giggles and laughs. Why? Because the child trusts that you will catch him or her coming down. Indeed, that's the level of trust. When we go to sleep at night, we set our alarm clock for the next morning. We have no idea if we're going to wake up tomorrow morning. We don't know if when we fall asleep that we're going to die in our sleep. We don't. But we still set our alarm clock. Why? Because we have faith that we're going to wake up the next morning. This is an innate nature that God has given us to have trust and faith in him, and in the Bible and in the Torah. And indeed, when it comes to purifying a person, these are the ingredients. Even though we don't understand it, we don't appreciate it because we're not God. We're not the omnipotent. We're not the omnipresent. We are a limited, finite human being, which we're living in this world for a certain amount of time versus God was, is, and will be forever. So I want to share with you a thought that could help us understand it. And this could help you and I in our journey of life. Ashes represents the end. Ashes is what anything that was in existence. Its last existence on this world is the level of ashes. After ashes, it disappears. But take any object, physical object in this world, its last step is ashes. So when something gets burnt to the core, gets reduced to what? To ashes. After ashes, it's gone. Let's take the opposite end of that spectrum, which is water. Water is our introduction to this world. When the fetus is conceived and becomes a fetus, it spends the next 9 months swimming in liquid, in water. And when it emerges, when the child is born, its body is dependent on water. 60% of the world is covered in water. Water is our source of life. It is only with water that keeps us alive. A person could survive without food for quite some time, but not without water. Water is what sustains us. So here we have two opposites. We take ashes that represents the end, the last stop of existence in this world, and we combine it with the beginning with water, and you mix them together, and that brings the person purity. The significance of this is so beautiful because God is teaching us that when we encounter in life an experience that we feel like we've been reduced to ashes, that we have lost everything, everything is gone, we are faced with a terrible calamity, we have been faced with death, with illness, with disasters, we need to remember at that time that it's not the end, because with every end, we reintroduce the water. There's going to be a new beginning. No matter how low, no matter how devastated of a situation you have been faced, we do not give up because the water represents our opportunity, the rebirth. Take a look just 80 years ago. During the Holocaust, with 6 million innocent Jewish and others were reduced to ashes. Even till today, when you go looking in Europe in the concentration camps that are still there, you'll see mountains of ashes. But we didn't remain with ashes because the water was introduced. There was a rebirth. And here we are 80 years later. We have Judaism once again reborn. There are 14 million Jews living in the world right now. We have our homeland, Israel, that God gave to us, that God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that in 1948 we were able to declare it as state, yet once again after 2,000 years. Yes, so with ashes always comes water, the rebirth. This is the eternal lesson of the red heifer, that no matter what we have gone through, no matter how low we have been reduced to, we don't give up. Because the water, the source of life, is going to bring you back to life. Like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So it is with all of us. As we go through life, as we go through our difficult journeys, always remember that this too shall pass. The sadness, the losses, the ashes will not disappear because we're going to keep water with it for rebirth of life. And that will bring us to purity that we have. And that brings us to purity of humanity. To never give up, never go into despair, never go into depression, but rather get rejuvenated, feel a sense of rebirth, that from the ashes you shall rise again. I can tell that to you from a personal experience. After surviving the terrible mass shooting at our synagogue on April 27, 2019, the second synagogue in all United States history to have a mass shooting, I survived it. I survived 4 bullets coming at me with losing just 2 fingers, but the rest of me survived it. I felt like my life was destroyed, especially when the woman I was talking to, Mrs. Lori Lynn Gilbert Kay, was slaughtered right in front of me as I was talking to her. It was the worst devastation I could have experienced in life. But yet I learned that we can rise again. And here I am today, talking to you with words of inspiration to inspire you. From the ashes, the water rises again. God bless you. God loves you.